Welcome back to another Code Peterson tutorial where we are using GB Studio to make a top-down Zelda style video game for the original Game Boy. Now this tutorial is a little bit different than the other ones we've done as I've been playing around with this and kind of have some things added in here, and I didn't want to undo everything and try to remember where I left off last time. So I'll just kind of show you what I did, and it'll hopefully make this tutorial be a little shorter than some of our others also. So to begin with, up here in the little drop down menu, we're going to go to sprites. I did bring in a sprite just like I did with the rest of these, but I made a Venom sprite that's going to be used by our final enemy. And I made it so that this is like facing right, up, left, and down. And then I gave it a 4 direction movement, and I check marked flip right to create left facing frames. And again, you can watch that in our earlier tutorial where we imported all of our image sprites to this program. Same process. And then so this is idle right, idle up, idle down, moving right, moving up, moving down. They're all just one frame. I don't have any animations there in there with this at this time. We'll see if we decide to change that later on or not. All right, once that's done, then we went to Game World, and I was focusing on this boss level down here. One of the things when you first enter this level, I do have a display right when you enter in, and it's down here at the very bottom. But it says, "You dare challenge me, you will meet your demise. Asgard is mine." So basically, I added a new event. I searched for display dialogue, and I entered that text in there. So when we enter in, that text happens. We also have an enemy in here now, and this creature is our snake or our serpents that we created. And I don't have just an idle image of it in the image sprite. That's why it only shows up as a purple square right there. Um, but when I have that in there, then I went to on update, and I gave this a collision group of 2 because that's what our other enemies are using. And then I thought I would have this snake start moving to the right and then to the left and then back in the center. So on update, I went to add event, which mine shows up down at the very bottom, but yours will be much higher when you click on it. And I went to move actor, and I'm moving this actor to an X of 13, Y of 15. And you can see when I hover over this, that red square that appears down in the boss level, that's the point where this object is going to be moving to, this serpent or snake is. Once it gets there, then I went ahead and I went to launch projectile, and the projectile is going to be using our Venom tile sheet. And the source is from the self, actor 1, which is our snake. And I have the direction moving up, and I increased the lifetime to 2. And I did that so that um, it wouldn't disappear before reaching the end of the level. So that's a time you can kind of play around with in there, but that's what I have for right now. I also have on here destroy on hit, and then I gave the Venom a collision group of 3, which is the same collision group we gave our hammer. And I have on here destroy on hit, and it can collide with the player, which is us, and it can collide with 3, which is the hammer. Now, when I did that, I thought that would mean if this collides, if this venom collides with my hammer, it would then destroy the hammer and the venom. And I just thought that would be an interesting way to do that. But as you'll be able to see when we test this, the hammer and the venom just pass right through each other. So if any of you out there know how to do that and make it to where they both disappear at the same time, If you could put that in the comment section of this and help me out, that I would be grateful, and the other listeners and watchers. I might be the only one in the world who doesn't know how to do that. So anybody who could explain that to me, I would sure appreciate it. That would be awesome. So once that projectile is launched, then I'm moving the character to X of 16 and Y of 15 to move it to the edge. And then it's going to move back to its previous position, and it's going to launch another projectile. And then it's going to move just to the left of the original position, and it's going to launch a projectile. And then it's going to move to the corner, and then it's going to come back, launch a projectile, and then go back to the middle. And then I have it launching a projectile in the middle there also. So that's just what I have to begin with. That does create a few safe zones where the venom isn't going to travel. So if you don't want, the player to just be camped out in one space and hit the snake every time it goes through there, then you might want to change your movement patterns in there from what we did for that. That's just kind of what I did for the beginning on there. All right, so that is on update. Now, if I go to on hit and I select group 3, which is the hammer of our character, then on here, what I did was I created a local variable and increased it by 1. So basically, I did the old search for increment, and then I found the local variable 1 or whatever the one of your unnamed variables are, and I called it enemy life. Now, because enemy life is a local variable, I don't need to worry about going around and changing that in different places of the game. It's only while this level loads up. All right. Basically, every time the hammer hits the snake, we'll start with 0, and then it's going to add 1 each time. So the first time it gets hit by a hammer, then enemy life is 1. Then it gets hit by another one, enemy life is 2. Gets hit by another one, enemy life is 3, and so forth. Now you can see here where I had a if variable is equal to a value is what I searched for in there. And so the variable I chose in the drop down where you can find all your variables in there, I chose enemy life, which we defined up here. And remember, you can rename your variables by clicking on the pencil. So if mine was local variable 1, I could click the pencil and then I could rename it there. And then once it's renamed, then you can find it in the drop down menu. So I said when it's equal to 5, then it deactivates the snake. And then I created a new variable, set variable to true, and I named that variable by clicking the little pencil. I named it boss, just as a variable that allows us to know when the boss has been defeated. And then here it says, no, I can't lose. This isn't fair. All right, now boss is going to be a global variable, something that can be recognized on all the other levels. So when I click my home level up here, I do have boss on there, and it is set to false. So that way when the game starts or when I lose and I have to go back, or if I get defeated by the boss and it takes me to the game over and then back to my start screen, boss is then reset back to false, and it'll remember that. A few last collision things that we should be aware of also, just like with these other enemies in here, when these came into contact with the player, then it was moved to the end of the game. Here in the boss level, if we click in this area, we select group 3, and that's going to be the venom that the snake is shooting out. And when that Venom, which is a group 3, comes into contact with the player. Then it goes to the end level. Also on the player, if we come into contact with a group 2, which is the snake on this level was a group 2, then that also takes us to the end level also. So those are kind of the obstacles we need to avoid when we are trying to defeat the boss. We don't want to come into contact with the boss or the venom that it's shooting at. So that's kind of a key thing in there. And I think that is all I need for that code for the actual boss serpent that we have on there itself. Something else I did add to the level is this little trigger here. And if you remember, we used to be able to go to this trigger and it would bring us back to the main level. Well, I changed that a little bit. And on this, you can see that I made a if variable false. And then I clicked the drop down and I selected boss. So if the boss is false, that means I haven't defeated the boss left. If I try to leave this level, it says you can't run from this fight. Otherwise, when I go to the trigger in the else section, then I have change scene to the main level. So that's a little change that I made with that also, so you can't just go in here and then leave right away. All right, now going here to the main level, I did change this entrance to this level up because if you remember over here, we have to defeat this enemy to go into this level to get the key. We need to have this key to go through this door to go over here and destroy this enemy. So I wanted to have something that would prevent us just from straight going down and fighting the boss right away. And so what I did was I used an if variable is equal to a value up here. And if you remember these enemies that we used, we added a little code to them in a previous tutorial where we did increment, variable increment by 1, and we called it enemies. And at the very beginning of our game, we have enemies equal to 0. So if each time we attack one of these enemies and we defeat it and it gives us an increment of 1, it's basically keeping count of this game. And you'll remember here on these levels, if we press the start button, it pauses the game and it says enemies destroyed, $enemies. So that will keep track of how many enemies we've battled. Well, I thought that would be a good way to decide whether or not we can make it through this trigger to go fight the boss. So up here we have if enemies, and I put is greater than 4, which means that you have to defeat 5 enemies. Then in there, I put another if statement, and this is if value is false, or if variable is false, and I selected boss from the drop down menu. So if the boss is false, which means we haven't defeated the boss, and if we've captured more than 4 enemies, then it's going to allow us to go into the boss level. And then in here, else, which means if the boss is true, in other words, if we defeated the boss, then here it's going to say this level is now under repair and we can't go back into that level. All right, then down here at the very, very bottom, we have an else for our original if the enemy is greater than 4. So if it's not greater than 4, then it's going to say you are not yet worthy for this challenge. And that way, you know, it's kind of like the original Legend of Zelda game for the Nintendo, where there were some things you just had to figure out on your own. So eventually, a person might just keep going through here and fighting these enemies. And then once they get to a certain number and they try it again, then they'll say, oh, so I just wasn't skilled enough, or the game didn't think I was skilled enough because I didn't defeat enough enemies. Also in here, remember where we said the boss, when it's defeated, then the boss variable becomes true. Up here on this level, on init, I have if boss is true, destroy the actor. And I made that for the rest of these levels also. So after we defeat the boss, the rest of these enemies are gone forever. They won't show back up. And then if we go back up here to our Odin level, I made a change up here and it says on hit with player. I added a if boss is true here also. And if boss is true, it says thank you, Thor, you saved Asgard. And then it goes to the end level screen. And if boss is not true, then that's where Odin reminds us that B throws the hammer on our Game Boy. The B button throws the hammer, fight enemies, and save Asgard. All right. That is all the things that I added to this. So now we're ready to try this out. Run the program. And that door is locked. This door we can't go through. If we were to try to go here while the enemy's in there, it's a game over. We need something to stop that enemy, so we'll go up here. We get our hammer. We talk to Odin by colliding into it. Odin says, B throws hammer, fight enemies, and save Asgard. All right, so now we can throw a hammer with the B button or with the X button on our keyboard. And we'll throw this over here. When I press return, it says enemies destroyed 1. Here we have our patrolling enemy. We'll grab the key. It's counting all those, good. Then we have our enemies showing back up each time we go in there, which is good because we need to get 5 of them in order to go through the bottom. Now if we go over here to the key, we have our enemy that follows us around. Stop that. There's 5 enemies. All right, so we should have enough now to go in. So we'll go to this bottom area and we have our text. You dare challenge me, you meet your demise, Asgard is mine. There's that serpent when I try to leave. It says you can't run away from this fight. And we have that serpent going back and forth. So we'll hit this with some hammers. And as you can see, this is what I was talking about before. We're never going to get hit by those if we stay in the spot. So you might want to change the pattern of the movement of the boss for you. So we hit that serpent 5 times. It says, no, I can't lose. This isn't fair. And now when we try to leave, we can leave. And when we go to these other levels, the enemies are all gone. Okay. We can go up here to the top. And now when we talk to Odin, thank you, Thor, you have saved Asgard. And then it takes us to game over. And then we could go back here and play again if we want to. So that's the game right there. Anything else that you want to add, to this, or if you have questions, let me know in the comments and I can have that be a topic of the next tutorial. Otherwise, if I don't really hear any feedback or get any messages from anybody on that, then our next one might be incorporating some music into this and just kind of fine tuning everything a little bit. But I appreciate you watching this. And again, let me know what you think in the comments and any other ideas for a future tutorial, and we'll get you on the next video.